Like, what are we talking about? Donald Trump literally called him a dictator, said he was responsible for his country getting invaded, said he's going to take all of his natural resources, said that, you know, we've been giving you so much money, you're a failed comedian, yada, 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 all this shit. And Zelensky still, obviously, understandably, because he needs American support, came to the United States of America to sign a fucking mineral deal that he didn't want to sign initially. And then in that very moment, Trump is like, no, you stop talking. And they kicked him out. Like, that's crazy. That is crazy. All right. Obviously, yesterday, there was an insane meeting that took place between Ukrainian President Zelensky and American sociopath Donald Trump. I covered this extensively. I hope that it's okay. I covered it extensively, and the YouTube video is finally out on my YouTube page. Don't know why we talked about the Trump administration releasing the Epstein docs first. My editors have been slagging a little bit lately. I don't know what the hell's going on there. They're just like uploading things back to back to back and also uploading them like 3 days later. But luckily they uploaded this one. You can go check that out. But in any case, here's where we are. Yeah, it's because I don't pay them. That's probably what it is. It's because they're trapped in my basement, slaving away.
Reaction around the world to the White House face-off between President Trump and Vice President Vance and Ukraine's President Zelensky, plus new drone strikes overnight between Ukraine and Russia.
We have team coverage this morning in Washington and overseas. So let's begin here with ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang in the nation's capital. Good morning, Selena.
Hey, good morning, Gio. What played out in the Oval Office yesterday was shocking, something we've never seen before. You had the president publicly berating the leader of a country that's been fighting for its survival ever since Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago. Now, the future of Ukraine and American support for the country are all unclear.
If you didn't have our military equipment, if you didn't have...
This morning, shockwaves around the world after peace talks implode between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. The Oval Office meeting turning explosive after Zelensky warns that if Russia takes over Ukraine, America will feel the pressure.
You have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
Vice President J.D. Vance jumping in to berate Zelensky.
Have you said thank?
I hate him so much. I just like I hate everyone, but I really hate J.D. Vance. Like the way that he came in and be like, have you said thank you once? Like, and his bitch ass, have you said thank you once, was presented by the White House as a flex. It's just like, it's so incredibly lame and gross, especially because, yeah, he did. Okay. The very fact that Zelensky is even sitting there is because he's there to grovel. Like, you already know the power dynamic in this circumstance. Like, what do you mean? He said thank you once? Like, yeah, dude, he did. He did multiple times. What do you want him to do? Like, what do you want him to do more? Like, get down on his knees and start sucking like J.D. Vance does? Is that what it is? There is not more bowing down that he could do, okay? The very fact that he was like, I don't want to do a mineral deal. And then a week later, he's like, we are going to sign mineral deal. A week later, okay, after Trump called him a dictator, said he ain't shit, said he sucks over and over again, said he was responsible for his country getting invaded, all this stuff. Like, he's already there. He is already proverbially sucking it and also trying to do his very best. Like, he desperately obviously needs a ceasefire to and American support to continue. Well, since you put me on blast, I mentioned I'm coming back from 1BA and apparently coming back worse. I'm going to stick up for myself because you guys are the ones that are annoying. I was just trying to talk about the original woke is a drug thing. Why is this annoying? Dude, okay, I don't know if you're going to understand this. The reason why you're being annoying is not because you have a just cause and people are undermining it. It's because you're being selfish. Okay? This is something that people like chatters, individual chatters sometimes can't comprehend. You know, think about this like a group of friends, okay? Think about the chat room like a group of friends. I'm going to very quickly try to explain this to you. Imagine if the group of friends have moved on to a different subject matter and you're still holding on to the previous subject matter, and then someone in the group gently tells you, hey, we've moved on, okay? Just, don't be annoying. And then you turn around and make the conversation about your feelings. Right now, you're making the conversation about your feelings. Except this is not just a group of friends. This is 20,000 people, okay? This is an arena full of people. And you're literally going, please talk to me about my own personal feelings. This is why you got probably banned last time around as well. So I urge you, please, whatever, fine, bye, it's fine, sorry. No, it's okay. People do it all the time. But you understand the dynamic in this community. I obviously respond. I see pretty much everything, okay? I see pretty much everything that's going on in the chat. I really value the back and forth that I have with chat. And sometimes people turn around and try to make it about themselves a little bit, okay? I love you, chatters. It's okay, sometimes you get in your own way, okay? Let's get back to this.
4-3.
Vice President J.D. Vance jumping in to berate Zelensky.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
Zelensky.
Have you said thank you once? He has, okay? Not only is his appearance there on this day to sign this mineral deal the endless thank you, okay? But also on top of that, he did say thank you directly numerous times. But this is not about thank yous, or rather, it should not be about thank yous, okay? It should not be about thank yous at all. It should be about, this conversation should have taken place privately, okay? And under different circumstances, regardless of party loyalty, regardless of whether it was Republicans or Democrats, this conversation does take place, usually. It just takes place behind closed doors. The very fact that it happened in front of a press pool is crazy. Your ego is inconsequential in the matter. What are we doing? That we're just now doing foreign policy on the whims of a narcissistic madman? It's crazy. And I still don't believe that is what is going on. I can't believe that the American machine could be at the mercy of one psycho, you know what I mean? One psycho in his thin skin. That's insane. It's wild. And I think that they will course correct eventually. But having said that, it is still shocking that this took place in the way that it did. I guess I should be more in an I told you so posture, because normally these kinds of conversations do take place. Normally, these kinds of assurances and this kind of back and forth and this kind of negotiation does happen. It just happens behind closed doors. And then on the optic side, on the public-facing side, America and our allies are like this, right? And then leftists are the ones who are supposed to say, no, you don't understand. This kind of conversation, there was a lot of back and forth that happened in this negotiations process. Ukraine wants more. America doesn't want to give it to them because America doesn't give a shit about Ukraine. And then every liberal is supposed to yell at me and say that I'm a campist, tanky Adolf Hitler lover for saying it. But because it happened in broad daylight this time around, there was virtually no way for liberals to deny the reality that they're seeing. This is in many ways, with the exception of the optics of it all, the back and forth, the underlying sentiment, the lack of interest in giving everything that Ukraine is demanding to Ukraine, and simply using them as against Russia because they're stuck being invaded by Russia and are desperate for our resources and our help, is precisely what has been going on. Okay? That's precisely what's been going on. The only difference is Trump is accelerating it in the more reactionary direction as he has done so far. And he's doing it very publicly. Doing it very publicly changes how soft power dynamics work for America and our allies. Okay?
Unable to reset the tone.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I answer?
Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
The White House blaming Zelensky for the blow-up. Trump kicking Zelensky out, canceling the press conference. Zelensky abruptly leaving without signing the deal for Ukraine to share its mineral resources. Later, Zelensky declining to apologize to Trump, but telling Fox News he's grateful.
I'm thankful to President Trump and to Congress bipartisan support. And I'm speaking like a president of a people who are in this struggle.
This was really interesting. Part of the reason why it was interesting is because you have to go on Brett Baird to, like, you know, talk to Donald Trump and possibly the entirety of the base of support for Donald Trump, which is crazy, right, in and of itself. Even if you're a foreign nation's leader, even if you are the leader of a foreign nation that was invaded, okay? So that in and of itself is already wild, okay? But what's also wild about it is that I think Zelensky falsely assumes one of three different things. Either he has a misplaced faith in European security partners carrying Ukraine to a better position of defense without the United States of America, which I think in the long term will not be successful. Or he thinks that the American public is not unimaginably selfish and will actually listen to reason, because he didn't stand down on Brett Baird's broadcast. He did not apologize. He didn't stand down. He just straight up was like, he just said it like it is. The situation on the ground is terrible. We obviously need support from America. I'm the president of my nation. I'm not going to, let my people be undermined. He took a bold stance. He took, dare I say, an idealistic stance. Okay? He was very honest about it. He was very honest about the situation, but I don't think he understands that showing conviction like that is not going to move the needle for Americans. It's certainly going to piss off Donald Trump even further. And because he's an absolute sociopath, I feel like he's just going to respond in the worst way possible to this. Okay? But then again, he's in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because he also has political pressures back home to worry about as well. He obviously can't grovel and beg as Trump regularly tries to humiliate him. And even outside of everything else, even if he were to grovel and beg, as he has done within the confines of reason, there's no assurances that Trump will play ball, if that makes sense. No, I do understand the position he's in. He has no practical option. No. That's precisely what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is literally nothing he can do in this situation. This is a horrible, horrible situation to be locked into. Okay? So I don't know. I don't know what happens from this point on, because Trump is so petty, even though foreign policy still moves in whichever direction, regardless of what Trump's statements are. And we've seen that with the way he's communicated with Israel, right? About Israel saying, like, you can do whatever you want, go kill, we're going to Gaza or whatever. And then Steve Witkoff will come and play the role of cleanup to be like, he doesn't mean it. Like, he just wanted our Arab partners to get more involved in this deal or whatever the fuck, right? Like they'll always like end up playing catch up after the fact. They always will sweep for Donald Trump and try to fix the posture and make it seem more reasonable when it's not. But like, with respect to Russia and Ukraine, it's obvious that even if Zelensky was super pro-Trump, which he has been, I think Trump simply doesn't care. He wants to bully Zelensky to posture as a very strong man. Ested had a really interesting take on this as well. Yeah, my immediate thoughts, this direct-to-consumer politics is core to the White House appeal, same as televised cabinet meetings. Also, huge gap in media coverage of Zelensky, positive and moralistic, and plummeting voter support for Ukraine aid. Course correction was politically overdue. Never seen anything quite like this, says David Cleon. This is the kind of exchange we read about from high-level leakers who were in the room, but they're carrying on like they're not surrounded by the press. Wild. So that's why that was what was so shocking. It wasn't shocking that Trump was like bullying Zelensky, okay? Because that is how we treat our allies. That is how we treat our proxies. Because the reality of the matter is we do hold all the cards in this situation, right? I'm not an avid viewer, but this is the dumbest take I've ever heard. Okay. You can maybe elaborate on why you think it's dumb or what your opinion is, and we can work on that. But he needs to eat his ego. Dude, he did eat his ego. You're wrong. Zelensky already ate his ego. Zelensky appearing here today to sign a mineral deal that he said he doesn't want to sign initially was already him eating his ego. And Trump took advantage of that and used it to further undermine him. That is my point. Like, he was there to kiss the ring. Like, what else is he supposed to do? He's stuck. He needs American help. Okay? Oh, Lex Friedman. Wait, Lex Friedman deleted. Lex Friedman deleted his post. I said, I want a ceasefire and wished for Biden to secure one when Ukraine had max leverage and libs called me an Adolf Hitler lover for years. Zelensky came to sign a mineral deal after Trump called him a dictator and falsely blamed him for Russia invading his country. You are dick riding. And then he deleted the tweet. It was because he had this like long tweet about how he's like, I just want peace. And I think Zelensky did the wrong thing. He made a follow-up. I regret engaging in the political dumpster fire of the Trump-Zelensky meeting. I simply want to do my small part in building bridges and pushing for long-lasting peace. I'll try to focus on that through long-form, nuanced conversation with people on all sides. I love you all. Yeah, the amount of disrespect President Zelensky showed to Donald Trump and the American people today was insane. This was a mistake. I have tremendous respect for President Zelensky and the heroic actions he took in the early days of war. I genuinely don't understand how you can look at the situation and be like, how dare he talk back? Like, at all. Like, do people not understand the dynamic leading up to this moment? Do people not comprehend like how much dick eating Zelensky has had to do up until that moment already? Like, what are we talking about? Donald Trump literally called him a dictator, said he was responsible for his country getting invaded, said he's going to take all of his natural resources, said that, you know, we've been giving you so much money, you're a failed comedian, yada, 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 all this shit. And Zelensky still, obviously, understandably, because he needs American support, came to the United States of America to sign a fucking mineral deal that he didn't want to sign initially. And then in that very moment, Trump is like, no, you stop talking. And they kicked him out. Like, that's crazy. That is crazy. You have to be so hopped up on cult fumes to look at this dynamic and be like, yeah, Zelensky really fucked up here. Like, what is he supposed to do? What more can he do? What more is he supposed to do? Like, I'm sorry. I mean, this is ridiculous. I did not think he was being disrespectful. I did not think he was being disrespectful at all. Unless you thought that he was supposed to get on his hands and knees. He was being disrespected. He was being disrespected endlessly. And he still was just there to kiss the ring to the best of his ability. And I think they still, like, I think that they, you know, still very obviously wanted to use this as an opportunity to completely destroy him, to shit on him. Zelensky should have done his homework. Watch Fareed Zakaria explain how to handle Donald Trump on real time. No, all of these guys are wrong. Okay. You want to know why I think all of these guys are wrong? Because they're making it seem as though like this is a Shinzo Abe situation. Shinzo Abe, beloved by Donald Trump, was always demonstrating fealty to him. Okay. Always. He was one of the few American allies that from the jump was super pro-Trump. When all of the other European allies were shitting on Trump, he was there by his side. Okay? R.I.P. Shinzo Abe. Now, that is a different dynamic, though, because Donald Trump already thinks Zelensky is an op. Okay? Donald Trump already thinks of Zelensky as an op. He does not see Zelensky as a asset even. He thinks that Zelensky is a fucking op. He thinks Ukraine is lib shit, okay? He thinks Zelensky should have given him blackmail so that he should have never lost to Joe Biden. And he is an op from day one, okay? He's an op from the last time. And he thinks, perhaps because of the unimaginable amount of support, mostly from the Democrats towards Ukraine, that he and his base attribute Ukraine to liberal nonsense. Like they think Ukraine is just lib shit. It's crazy how you profit off this bullshit. Whew. I'm a political commentator, brother. I don't know. Maybe you'll understand it one day. That's just kind of how it works. Profit off the shit. Runs no ads. All the revenue comes from voluntarily people subscribing because they want to support the show. Okay? Doesn't even monetize most of the content. Allows his fans to monetize it to the best of their ability. And you're over here still fucking complaining, still chirping. Go yell at somebody else. Anyway. JD's like that weak kid on the playground who always asks, are you going to let him say that about you trying to egg on a fight? My Ukrainian friend says Zelensky should have been smarter and a better diplomat to understand that Trump is a mad king kind of president. I get that, which is why I thought he would have apologized on Brett Baer. Okay? Dude, as a Ukrainian, I expect our president to do whatever it takes to save lives here. If he cannot endure some verbal remarks, he's not doing his job wrong. If they say to bark, he should bark. Okay, people are dying, useless assaults here. No, I understand that, guys. I do. But I'm telling you, the situation, at least for Zelensky with Trump, is a little different. Okay? I think that Donald Trump is thin-skinned enough to basically, even on the in the interim, even aesthetically, ruin a deal. Okay? This doesn't mean that it will always remain that way, but I do think that Donald Trump, I think we all understand Donald Trump is insane. Everybody gets that, okay? But I think Donald Trump's attitude here is completely, it's completely unacceptable.
In a strange way, I do feel like Zelensky should have studied this a little bit more. He's an emotional guy. I've met him many times. He's very brave. He's been fighting a war, and he let his emotion get the best of him. The way to have gone in there is first.
Dude, I'm sorry. People fucking. How is this happening? How am I the guy who's saying, after years and years of guys like Fareed Zakaria and all liberals yelling at me saying I love Adolf Hitler and I hate Zell Disney, how am I the guy defending Zell Disney and these guys are defending Donald Trump? What is going on? Like, what was he? I don't understand what these people are saying. His emotions got the best of him. He was getting dunked on by Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, dude. And he still was just sitting there and eating it. He was taking it. What the hell? Look, and the reason why I'm mad about all this is because I want a ceasefire, okay? That's what's so frustrating about this is that Donald Trump, unironically, is cooking the ceasefire negotiation that he is supposed to bring to the table, okay? On the one hand, bringing Putin to the table and negotiating with Putin is a necessity if you want the bloodshed to end, okay? That is just how it works. Doesn't matter if we agree to it or not. That is how it works. So on the one hand, yes, Donald Trump is doing the right thing by bringing Putin to the negotiations process, bringing Putin to the table. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is doing it in the worst ways possible and also cooking his own deal. Because in that process, every side has to get W's, okay? You cannot just simply chop down Zelensky and the Ukrainian position. You cannot do that, okay? That is ridiculous. You are an insane person. Like, you have to give them something back. So many people have died. Are you out of your mind? Like, it's insane. It's insane to just, like, use every opportunity you have to suck off Vladimir Putin as hard as you can, to a degree where you're also directly undermining Ukraine in the process. And I think the real reason why he's doing that is because he just is a petty bitch. Okay? Straight up. So many people had to die, yet it's right to give Zelensky more weapons. That's not what I'm saying, dude. What are you talking about? I'm saying that if you put forth a ceasefire and a negotiation, okay, and bring Vladimir Putin to the table while also undercutting Zelensky and undercutting the Ukrainian position and saying that they're responsible for Vladimir Putin invading them over and over again, okay, you're literally, you're not coming to the table in good faith. You're just actively telling everybody that your goal is to offshore and dump all your older weapons on Ukraine, undermine the Russian military, and then pick apart the rest of the country for scraps. Like, he's just saying the quiet part out loud, but in the process, he's also developing an unimaginable amount of resentment from Ukrainians. Okay. And there is no, like, you're making it less likely for any kind of real ceasefire negotiation to take place. And as someone who is an advocate for a ceasefire in perpetuity, I get very frustrated when I see that. Okay. Part of the reason why, however, I think part of the reason why he did that is, as Ested says, to course correct, to basically not just bully Zelensky, which is, you know, great for him. He wants to do that for sure. But also to basically get the media to understand what's what. Like, he's not a careful dude. He's not a particularly smart guy. But I think I understand like what Ested is saying here, which is he is trying to directly tell America the past 3 years of pro-Zelensky coverage that you saw about like Russia is losing the war, Ukraine is winning the war, all that shit is gone, okay? Done. It's done. It's not. Ukraine is a proxy. We've always used them as a proxy. We're going to continue using them as a proxy, and there's no more like standing ovations for Zelensky and propping him up as like a bold, brave person trying to defend his country. Okay? I think that's what Donald Trump is trying to do, but he's doing it in the way that, I mean, I don't even think he should do that, by the way, for the record. I don't think that it's appropriate of him to do that, but I think that's what he's actively doing here, while also telling everybody there is no soft power. Would you do this for free? Yes, as evidenced by the fact that I am. Like, you're literally watching for free. Think about that. And I did for many years. You're watching for free. You're currently watching for free. And do you actually think that Ukraine needs a security guarantee that Zelensky is arguing for which Trump seems to not prioritize as much? So in terms of that back and forth, in terms of like Zelensky saying, we need a security guarantee. We need a security guarantee. And Trump being like, you're not going to get it. Fuck off. Right? That conversation should not be happening in broad daylight. That's my, like, or under normal circumstances, that conversation does not happen in broad daylight. Because when it does happen in broad daylight, that means America is becoming even more actively violent and taking ownership over their selfish nature. And in some ways, I think it's a radicalizing moment for a lot of people. And, you know, I hope people learn the right lessons, but I think it's going to break the brains of a lot of people. They're not going to learn the right lessons from this. They're not going to be like, oh, I get why Hasan always says America bad and then explains the reasons as to why. I think they're just going to look for alternative reasons. You know what I mean?
Years, and they just want to hear that America on our side and that America will stay with us, not with Russians, with us.
Trump has brushed off concerns that Putin could violate a peace deal, refusing to guarantee Ukraine's security so Russia won't invade again. I asked the president who he trusts more.
Do you trust Putin or Zelensky more?
Look, I don't trust or distrust anybody. I just want to get a deal done. And if the deal happens, good. But you can't embolden somebody that does not have the cards, and all of a sudden that person says, oh, well, now I can keep fighting.
And sources tell me the Trump administration is now considering cutting off all ongoing shipments of military aid to Ukraine. And this is a strong signal of this dramatic plunge that we've seen in relations between wartime allies, even though at this point it's unclear what the effect of that would be on the battlefield, guys.
Unclear indeed. All right, Selena, thank you so much. And as you can imagine, we are getting lots of reaction this morning to that Oval Office shouting match from around the world. ABC's Tom Sufi Burridge is in London with that side of the story. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Gio. Yeah, alarm bells are really ringing out across Europe this morning after that jaw-dropping bust-up. European and other Western leaders are rallying behind President Zelensky in Ukraine, but Western diplomats now have their work cut out to try and mitigate the damage. The reaction in Ukraine so far is a near consensus that President Zelensky stood up for his people, trying to correct misconceptions and even at times disinformation from the Trump administration about the war, and also fighting for Ukraine's baseline, that they can only accept a peace agreement if there are security guarantees to prevent Russia invading yet again. Now, despite his principal cause, some analysts are questioning whether Zelensky, at a disadvantage in a foreign language, might have misjudged the moment. And there's now deep concern about the impact this will have on US military support, which was already in jeopardy. Without it, Ukraine will suffer a significant blow. The winner out of this is Russia, the Kremlin savoring the moment, praising Trump and mocking Zelensky. And the European Union's top diplomat now suggesting America's role as leader of the free world could be over and Europe should now work to fill the gap. Moments ago, Zelensky touching down here in London ahead of a European summit tomorrow amid a unique sense of crisis on this continent. Janae?
Unique sense of crisis indeed. Tom, thank you for that.
Why is nobody talking about China, man? All right, here is the CNN exclusive. You don't see all the things that lead up to this. Rubio defends Trump. Okay? All the Trump supporters in my work have been quiet since the election. This situation is the first time they've talked outwardly. So I think there's two different kinds of Trump supporters here. Hasan, I agree with your standpoint on the subject, but what is your take about those videos where we see Ukrainian officials yanking men off the streets and often beating them up and taking them away, unroll them by force, send them into the trenches? Yeah, no, that's why I'm saying, obviously, it's time for a ceasefire. Okay? I have long maintained this position, but it's obvious, especially now, that Ukraine has run out of manpower. Unless they lower the age of conscription to 18 from 25, which is what Biden suggested on his way out, okay? And Trump even entertained it for a brief moment, and they start pulling younger and younger men and just completely eviscerate their next generation, there is not much more time that Ukraine has in this process. On the other side, it's not like Russia is cruising through this either. Okay? They're not cruising through this as well. It's not like they're having a great time here either. So, you know, before all the Z pushers say like, "Oh, dude, they're also killing it." Like, no, it is in both parties' best interest to wrap it up. The only party that doesn't necessarily care about the length of this and you know, is just trying to make out with as much money as possible from this process as they have so far is the United States of America. But because of the terms set on the battlefield, I think that Ukraine has two options. Either they go back to their European partners and America as well and forcibly deport all of the able-bodied Ukrainian men that are of age, okay, and then instantly start training them and forcibly conscripting them to go out and fight, and then also simultaneously continue getting weapons from America, continue getting weapons from Europe and whatnot, and you know, continue the war of attrition and potentially eviscerate their next generation, okay? Or they have to do a ceasefire. But in this process, America holds all the cards on the Ukrainian side. And therefore, I think we owe it to the Ukrainians to make sure that we give them the best possible deal we can. It is insane to me that this is like out of the question from the Trump perspective. The notion that like the responsible party is Ukraine and that the Ukraine is you know, not playing ball and being annoying is psychotic to me. Okay? It's completely psychotic. It's ridiculous. Yes. I'm fairly certain that Zelensky himself also recognizes the conditions on the battle lines. Okay? He's not delusional. He sees it. Everybody that even OSINT Twitter sees it. Okay? The only people that don't see it are people that only hear about this stuff every now and then from MSNBC and New York Times or whatever, because like there is also an active war of information happening as well. Russia keeps saying they're cruising and it's awesome and nobody died or whatever. And Ukraine says basically that their battle lines are hardened and that they're totally doing a great job, and that any day now they're going to push back the Russian forces and the Kursk offense, and they took Russian territory, and therefore, they'll have a bargaining chip in that regard. And I think that the casualty numbers, I suspect that the casualty numbers are fairly high, like very high, higher than the way that it has been presented for both sides. This new pro-Ukraine HasanAbi is great to see. What? This is not a new take. I have been an advocate for a ceasefire in Ukraine under the Biden administration and regularly yelled at the Biden administration over and over again. This is not a new position. Why should the U.S. care about giving the best deal possible for Ukraine? Because we expended them. Like, what do you mean?
And my source tonight is the Secretary of State, who is in that room today, Marco Rubio. Thank you so much, Secretary Rubio, for being here. We just heard from President Zelensky. He said he does not think that he owes President Trump an apology for what happened inside the Oval Office today. Do you feel otherwise?
I do, because you guys don't see. You guys only saw the end. You saw what happened today. You don't see all the things that led up to this. So let me explain. The president's been very clear. He campaigned on this.
Yeah, the take I've always had is finally the most pro-Ukraine take in liberals' eyes, because they have arrived at my conclusion years later. Okay? After years and years of yelling about how I love Adolf Putler with out-of-context clips that I found out later were directly advocating for the exact opposite thing that they claimed I was advocating for, by the way. And moments where I like lose my shit on a chatter and respond to them for 10 seconds, as though that in and of itself is indicative of the, hundreds of hours of commentary on this process. Finally, they've also arrived at the conclusion that like maybe a ceasefire could be a good opportunity, and they're like shedding their delusion on this, or maybe even recognizing that America has been using and abusing Ukraine because they're not interested in Ukrainian emancipation, but simply interested in making money, lo and behold, and also, undermining a foreign adversary. That finally they've arrived at the similar conclusion that I've had. So now they can turn around and say, "Oh, wow, you're pro-Ukraine, I guess."
He thinks this war should have never started. He believes, and I agree, that had he been president, it never would have happened. Now here we are. He's trying to bring an end to this conflict. We've explained very clearly what our plan is here, which is we want to get the Russians to a negotiating table. We want to explore whether peace is possible. They understand this. They also understand that this agreement that was supposed to be signed today was supposed to be an agreement that binds America economically to Ukraine, which to me, as I've explained, and I think the president alluded to today, is a security guarantee in its own way, because we're involved. It's now us. It's our interests. That was all explained. That was all understood. And nonetheless, for the last 10 days, in every engagement we've had with the Ukrainians, there's been complications in getting that point across, including the public statements that President Zelensky has made. But they insisted on coming to D.C. This agreement could have been signed 5 days ago, but they insisted on coming to Washington. And there was should have been a very clear understanding. Don't come here and create a such scenario where you're going to start lecturing us about how diplomacy isn't going to work. President Zelensky took it in that direction, and it ended in a predictable outcome as a result. It's unfortunate. That wasn't supposed to be this way, but that's the path he chose. And I think, frankly, sends his country backwards in regards to achieving peace, which is what President Trump wants at the end of the day, is for this war to end. He's been as consistent as anyone can be about what his objective is here.
But what specifically do you want to see President Zelensky apologize for?
Well, apologize for turning this thing into the fiasco for him that it became.
Real psycho hours, dude. We've devolved so much. It's crazy. What should he apologize for is a great question here. And the answer always is just like basically nothing. Okay. It's just like, he should not have responded at all. Okay. Like the very fact that he's there over and over again, thanking the administration like a million times over, thanking them over and over and again. Like what more? What do you want? He's just been eating it. Like what is really messed up that he didn't get on his hands and knees and beg. It's also interesting to see Marco Rubio say this because he's supposed to be the reasonable war hawk. Okay. Obviously, when you're in the Trump administration, reason kind of goes out the window. But on the one hand, Marco Rubio is supposed to manage the direction, manage the trajectory of the allegiances, and basically turn around and be like, oh, Trump didn't mean it like that. But it does seem like they're just actively going after Zelensky and saying he is at fault here. So I guess, I don't know. We're just cutting Ukraine off completely. I don't know what the hell's going on. Like, is there a realignment happening? Who knows?
There was no need for him to go in there and become antagonistic. Look, this thing went off the rails. You were there, I believe. It went off the rails when he said, let me ask you a question to the vice president. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Well, this is a serious thing. I mean, thousands of people have been killed, thousands. And he talks about all these horrible things that have happened to prisoners of war and children, all true, all bad. This is what we're dealing with here. It needs to come to an end. We are trying.
It's crazy. Yeah, okay. You explain all of that. Not to be too libbed up here. Not to be too libbed up here. But if you explain all of that, how do you also simultaneously explain Donald Trump being like, and all of that is the fault of Zelensky? How does that make sense? Like, I don't understand it. What do you, even if your position is that Ukraine bit off more than it could chew with Russia, okay? And really egged on Russia and you know, found itself too comfortably in the bosom of Western empire when it's supposed to be like the boundary, the Russia's red line in perpetuity that the NATO allies also understand. Okay? Even if that's your position, how the fuck is that still Zelensky's fault? At that point, you should be blaming previous administrations, but you can't do that because Donald Trump also was a previous administration president. And in the process, he, you know, continued the same foreign policy perspectives with respect to Ukraine. So for that reason, you can't really say previous administrations really fucked it up too, which is why you arrive at this situation where you have to blame Zelensky, the most insane position you can arrive at. That's it. That's it. That's literally it. Okay? How do you defend saying, JD saying, have you said thank you enough? What an insane thing to say. Yeah, I know. It's not only awful in terms of form, like it was just so gross of him to say that, but it was also so stupid. Like you're, like who are you? You're not even here. Like you're not even a part of this admin, little bro, okay? You're just kind of here as like Peter Thiel's blood boy who just communicates all the secret closed-door meetings back to him directly.
Trying to bring it to an end. The way you bring it to an end is you get Russia to the table to talk. And he understands that attacking Putin, no matter how anyone may feel about him personally, forcing the president into a position where you're trying to goad him into attacking Putin, calling him names, maximalist demands about Russia having to pay for the reconstruction, all the sorts of things that you talk about in a negotiation. Well, when you start talking about that aggressively, and the president's a deal maker. He's made deals his entire life. You're not going to get people to the table. That maybe Zelensky doesn't want a peace deal. He says he does, but maybe he doesn't. And
dog, why is he there then? Why is he there? You guys have legitimized denying actual truth. No, why is Zelensky there to begin with? Clown Lensky's a corrupt puppet and war criminal. He and his EU-US cosmopolitan globalist backers are scared of a ceasefire killing their cash cow, dreams of color revolutions, and ruin the endless destabilization of the whole region. He feeds on chaos. A ceasefire means his political death. Stop being a skibbity toilet. Dog, I don't even know where to begin to address this. Okay? Donald Trump is literally the EU-US cosmopolitan globalist backer. He is that guy. What do you think his solution is here? Like what? No, this is such an insane thing to say. Donald Trump is the president of America. He is not a Maoist third worldist, dude. Wake up. Okay? No, I will be skibbity. And you need to stop phantom taxing. Okay? I will be so skibbity. I will stick out my gat for the Rizzler. Stop it. What the fuck? What are you saying?
And that active
like, dude, Unk, you're washed. You brain rot isn't convincing. Okay. The question I always have for these guys, is this. Okay. If Donald Trump is not this like globalist guy, he's a real isolationist, why is he advancing the Brandonian agenda of Saudi nuclearization and potentially even sending troops to Saudi Arabia to protect Saudi Arabia, and troop escalation in the region that he has not scaled back on, and as a matter of fact is giving Israel quintillions of dollars of weapons, just like Biden did. Why is that the case? Can one of these fucking MAGA communists respond to this question? Can someone explain to me what the Maoist third worldist position of Donald Trump is? And you know, how did that happen? How do you square that circle? Explain that to me. Why is he just deep-throating Benjamin Netanyahu on a daily basis? How does that work?
Open undermining of efforts to bring about peace is deeply frustrating for everyone who's been involved in communications with them leading up to today. And I think he should apologize for wasting our time for a meeting that was going to end the way it did.
You yourself have said previously that Putin cannot be trusted in negotiations. That was the point that President Zelensky was ultimately making during that conversation, is that there cannot be an agreement without security guarantees, because he was talking about all the ceasefire agreements before, or agreements that Putin has just blown past. I mean, do you still feel that way, that Putin cannot be trusted in these negotiations?
Well, I was there yesterday when the president said in front of the media that our...
Yeah, this is also... The liberal position here is also kind of silly, too, because, like, when you're in the midst of, like, securing a ceasefire deal with the other party, yeah, you're not going to constantly talk about, like, how they can't be trusted. They can't be trusted. Like, what do you mean? That's the one aspect of Trump's commentary that if he wasn't an insane person, I would understand. I'd be like, yeah, you can't, like, we get it. Okay? I understand. Yes, Vladimir Putin can't be trusted. Okay? I know. Trust me. I know. Look at the last 3 years. But the point is, if the options in front of us are unlimited battle and trench warfare, as both parties are just butting heads in the meat grinder, okay, and a conditional ceasefire agreement that might actually fall apart once again because of destabilization from the Russian side, then you go back to square one. That's it. You go back to permanent war. That's it. That's it. That is literally my argument, and was my argument when liberals used to get mad at me all the time. They were like, appeasement. You're doing appeasement. You're doing appeasement to Russia when you say you want a ceasefire. It's like, no, dude. I see the situation. I see the writing on the wall. When it comes to nuclear arms, when it comes to nuclear nations, the dynamic is very different. There's a reason why there is no no-fly zone over Ukraine. Why do you think there is no no-fly zone over Ukraine right now? Ukraine wanted it. It's a perfectly understandable desire. Why is there none? Think. That's because two nuclear-armed nations are not going into conflict with one another because the nukes will start flying.
Our approach is going to be trust but verify. President Trump's made deals his entire life. He's not going into some deal that's not a real deal. We all understand this. We understand it on our end for certain. And so the goal here is to get to a place we have to explore whether peace is possible. I've said this repeatedly. I don't know. I think it is, based on what they've said so far, but we have to explore that. How else is this war going to end? I ask people, what is the European plan to end this war? I can tell you what one foreign minister told me, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I can tell you what one of them told me, and that is that the war goes on for another year. And
bro pointed to his ear. When he said one of them told me, he meant he actually heard them from 7,000 miles away, actually. Okay? My man's got satellites on him, dude. This is crazy work. He's like, yeah, one of them told me, as in they were talking in a private meeting 7,000 miles away in an underground bunker, and I heard it.
At that point, Russia will feel so weakened that they'll beg for a peace. That's another year of killing, another year of dying, another year of destruction. And by the way, not a very realistic plan in my point of view. So if there's a chance of peace, even if it's a 1% chance, that needs to be explored. And that's what President Trump is trying to do here.
I mean, okay. All right, here he is trying to moderate it, okay? He is trying to moderate it. Okay, this is, okay. The last part of this, he stuck the landing, okay? He did. He flubbed in the beginning, but ultimately the damage control implies, this is why I said what Rubio says is more significant than what Trump says in the meetings, because while they have to defend Donald Trump's feelings, which is such an insane thing to say, but he is an incredibly emotional person and very thin-skinned. And these guys have to basically play ball with a psycho, okay? Marco Rubio is old school politician, and that's the reason why he's in charge of the State Department. So what he says, I think, is more important than what Donald Trump says. So while the first part of this was just like basically saying like, oh, you know, Zelensky is corrupt, or, you know, he should have groveled further or whatever. Then he turns around and is like, but, you know, we have to give peace a try. We have to do, no matter what the alternative is, you know, this is what we're going to do. This is what this admin is going to move forward with.
President Trump said just when he was leaving the White House after that meeting that he doesn't think President Zelensky wants peace. But isn't that why the Ukrainian leader was in the Oval Office for that meeting?
Great question by Caitlin Collins. Is correct. My question as well.
Today?
Well, he was in the Oval Office to sign a minerals rights deal. That's what he was in the Oval Office to sign today. But again, when you have comments that deliberately appear to be I mean, after having discussed this repeatedly, deliberately appear to be geared towards making the argument that peace is not possible. You know, again, he turns to the vice president. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Almost as if to say, these people, you can't deal with them. You can't have any negotiations with Putin because he can't be trusted. And you're.
There's not, no. No, brother, then he wouldn't have showed up. Like, what are we talking about, man? What are we talking about? They are trusting Putin, so stupid. No, Marco Rubio's statement there is not incorrect. Even if there's a 1% chance that there could be a ceasefire, we have to take it, is not incorrect, especially when, as the head of the State Department, he's also laying out the truth of the matter in terms of what the battlefield looks like. Okay, he's saying that, look, read between the lines. Understand that this is not a normal cabinet, okay, where Donald Trump will both be brutally honest and very ruthless in times and demonstrate American ruthlessness in broad daylight, but also is very narcissistic and kind of short-tempered and short-sighted, so much so that he will fuck up a ceasefire deal that his people, the Marco Rubios of the world, put together. Okay? Trump administration wants public apology from Zelensky to mend relations after Oval Office clash. Bloomberg. He is literally lying about what Zelensky said and wants, though? Yes, I know. The reason why he's lying about what Zelensky said and wants is because, one, we don't give a fuck about our proxies. We don't give a fuck about our allies. He can just betray them and shit on them all day, every day. And two, he certainly has to play ball with Donald Trump. He has to play around Donald Trump's feelings. He has to run defense for Donald Trump. Because if he doesn't run defense for Donald Trump is going to be like, okay, you're done. You're a rhino. And his idiotic base is also going to be like, okay, I guess Marco Rubio was always a war hawk and a rhino. Because in some ways he is, I mean, he absolutely is a war hawk.
You're just wasting your time on negotiations. Well, he's directly, basically undermining everything the president has told him he's trying to do. Look, there's no need for that. You start to suspect, does he really want an end to this war? Does he just think that, you know, we have to do whatever he says and give him anything he wants without any end game? That was the Biden strategy. We were funding a stalemate. We were funding a meat grinder. And unfortunately, for the Ukrainians, the Russians have more meat to grind, and they don't care about human life. We've seen it, human waves. And so,
by the way, this, without the backdrop of Donald Trump's statements, this is what you would hear from a reasonable Republican. Like, not the first 5 minutes, okay? But this is what you would normally hear from a cabinet that was changing like that was trying to pack up the Ukraine situation, basically. A more polite approach to this would basically be, it's a meat grinder. Ukraine doesn't have enough manpower. Either they lower their age of conscription and also force European allies and the United States of America, or ask European allies in the United States of America to start deporting able-bodied Ukrainian men back to Ukraine so they can hold weapons and engage in this war of attrition, okay? Or we have to give peace a chance. That is what you would normally say, Okay. And then the back and forth and the yelling at one another would probably happen behind closed doors. And then some leaker would explain to us that that is what happened behind closed doors. And then I would point to that leaker and I would say, see, America doesn't give a fuck about Ukrainians. And then all of the liberals will yell at me and say, I'm Adolf Putler lover. I'm Mr. Lover of Adolf Putler. America does care about Ukrainian emancipation. And we would have this back and forth. The reason why we're not having that back and forth is because Trump is basically openly doing it in broad daylight. Why does he voluntarily go on CNN instead of pro-Trump media? What do you mean? Because this is him fixing Trump's insanity in his way. He's trying to do damage control. He's trying to give assurances to, you know, the military-industrial complex and the Capitol owners who still listen to CNN and aren't like brain-broken QAnon dick riders for MAGA world. Yeah, this is his attempt at trying to do damage control, but he knows that Donald Trump is going to hear him, and he knows he has to play a role here, and you know, spare Trump's feelings while simultaneously saying like, these are the real reasons why we need to do a ceasefire.
So this is a very complex thing. It's very delicate. It's very costly. It's very bloody. It needs to be brought to an end, but it isn't going to be brought to an end with public pronouncements and maximalist demands in the public, but in real diplomacy. The vice president was right.
When you say they don't care about life, are you talking about the Russians or the Ukrainians?
Well, the Russians, I mean, they're conscripting by the hundreds of thousands. They brought in North Korean troops that were slaughtered in Kursk, and they keep going because they got more people. That's the other fact. Look, and it's, you know, again, we go back to the same point. I'm not going to fall into this trap of the who's bad and who's evil. People can make those conclusions. People have seen how this narrative has played out and where we are today and how this all started and so forth. The point now is it has to end. And the way it ends is you get people to a negotiating table, and the president, who's the ultimate deal maker, knows you don't get people to a negotiating table when you're calling them names and you're accusing them of things, because at the end of the day, this is not a political campaign, okay? This is high-stakes international diplomacy and an effort to bring about an end to a very, very dangerous war.
But you yourself, sir, have said before that you believe Putin is a war criminal, that is a widely accepted fact. You've called him a butcher. And you've said that as a Secretary of State, you do believe it's important for someone with such global influence as you have to speak with that kind of moral clarity.
Yeah, and at this moment, as Secretary of State, my job working for the president is to deliver peace, to end this conflict and end this war. Ultimately, that is the job of the State Department. The State Department doesn't fight wars, it ends them. It tries to end them. And that's usually, by the way, celebrated.
Okay, Cap.
I mean, throughout history, I've watched presidents.
The State Department doesn't start wars, it ends them. The American State Department, okay, dog. Yeah. Security guarantee is what Zelensky wants. Yeah, the entire point of contention that should have been done privately but is being done publicly is that security guarantee is what Zelensky wants. Trump thinks mineral agreement is basically that because Putin wouldn't dare to fuck with Trump's money. Yes, exactly. And Zelensky thinks, for understandable reasons, no, Putin would definitely fuck with your money. And he would definitely go back to the drawing board and restart conflict. That's the point. That is the point of contention here. Okay? My point is, I don't give a fuck. I want people to stop dying, which is why I think for as long as you can commit to a ceasefire is a good thing, is a benefit. The notion that this gives Russia an opportunity to re-up and rearm and then pummel Ukraine further is silly. It's the same principle behind the Israeli-Palestinian ceasefire that was implemented, and I had the exact same position then, warning people that Israel most likely is going to re-up and rearm and likely pummel and permanently annex the West Bank, but it's still ultimately a good thing that people are not being fucking slaughtered in the process. That was my position on Israel-Palestine, and it's the consistent position I have for Russia and Ukraine.
Is to bring about an end to wars and conflicts, and people celebrate that. They applaud it. I think we should be very proud and happy that we have a president whose prime objective is not to get into wars, but to prevent wars and to get out of wars. That is a very noble, laudable goal. Everyone should be applauding it, and he should be given the space to do that, not under Putin names or that we say things that impede the ability to conduct real diplomacy, as the vice president said today.
To follow up on what you just said a moment ago, are you saying that you have doubts that President Zelensky wants this war to come to an end?
What I have doubts about is whether he's willing to say and do the things that we need in order to get a negotiation. Again, you guys, this has been going on for 10 days. And, you know, to see things in the press saying we're not coordinating with the Ukrainians, that's absolutely false. Over the last 10 days, the Ukrainians have met with the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of State, the Vice President of the United States, had a phone call with President Trump, and he was in the Oval Office today. I've talked to the foreign minister of Ukraine 3 times in the last 10 days. The argument that we're not engaging, but yet you keep reading these press accounts about, oh, well, they're leaving us out. We're not involved. We're not engaged. None of these things are true, and it continues. So all that led up to today in a deep sense of frustration. And my hope is that this all can be reset and maturity can kick in and some pragmatism, because this war tonight, people will die in Ukraine. Tonight, people will die in this conflict. We're trying to bring an end to this conflict, which is unsustainable. It's an unsustainable, bloody war that has to come to an end. And right now, the only leader in the world that can even have a chance.
Even if Zelensky doesn't like the deal, it does not matter. Because America holds all the cards in this process, they are supposed to be more reasonable and not fucking humiliate Zelensky and undermine him. Especially because, like, we're in the process of looting Ukraine. Like, what are we talking about? We are quite literally in the process of looting Ukraine. Everybody, every reasonable person, and I think Zelensky himself, understands the power dynamic here. Okay? So if every single person understands the power dynamic here, how the fuck are you going to actively undermine your supposed ally in the process, your proxy in the process? Ugh. Undermining and humiliating your proxy in the process undermines your standing. This is my point. Trump's ego is getting in his own way of actually securing a reasonable ceasefire negotiation. That's my point. He is such a fucking man-child and so goddamn thin-skinned that even if he brought forth reasonable positions initially, it's impossible to say that he brought forth reasonable positions because it was sandwiched between insanely unreasonable shit that he was doing in terms of, you know, taking all of Ukraine's resources and also simultaneously bullying Zelensky. Like, he has more smoke for our proxy in this process than he does for the adversary. Okay? That's wild.
Of bringing about an end to this is named President Donald Trump. And we need to give him the opportunity to try and do that. And when you see efforts to impede it, when you tell someone, don't say, let's not talk about these things, let's not go in this direction because it makes it harder for us to engage, and they insist on doing it anyways, you start to wonder. I don't like to impugn people's motives, but you start to wonder what's behind it. So look, again, let's hope that this can be salvaged, but I'm not sure after today.
You don't believe that this can be, you're not
the
sure.
adversary is strong, the proxy is weak, so it makes sense? No, it doesn't make sense. And the reason why it doesn't make sense is because America is still stronger than Russia. I can't believe people are still saying, how is Ukraine a proxy of the U.S.? I'm losing my freaking mind, dude. Oh my God. I'm losing it. If that was not the case, Zelensky would not be coming to the United States of America yesterday after Trump called him a dictator. Okay? Please. Donald Trump has been actively undermining Zelensky nonstop. And Zelensky, even after being kicked out of the White House, has been thanking him over and over and over again. Why do you think that's happening? The United States has been using Ukraine to fight against Russia. This is not a secret. This is what they have been openly stating. I don't know how people still at this stage refuse to recognize that when virtually every politician has actively said it. Okay? I saw a piece from Lloyd Austin who said as much. America is on the right side, being on Ukraine's side in this process, as I have said over and over again. Ukraine is the country that was wronged. It was invaded by a larger adversary. Russia is in the wrong. Ukraine is on the right. Having said that, however, America's interests with Ukraine are not for emancipatory reasons. It is not. And every single politician has basically recognized this reality and openly stated it. What's wild to me, however, is that even in this moment, people still act like that's not the case, and I don't understand.
Let's face it, we're waging a proxy war. We're waging a proxy war, but we're not giving our proxies the ability to do the job. And for years and years now, we've been allowing them to fight with one hand tied behind their backs, and it has been cruel. It has been cruel. And we need now to give them what they need.
There's Boris Johnson, the great deal maker himself. But it's not just that. Hold on. There's more. I mean, you got like the most reasonable heads, the most reasonable foreign policy heads, not even like the demented Brandon team. I'm talking like, people who actually are in charge of the foreign policy. Also openly stating it. This is from an op-ed by Megan K. Stack. Okay, here. U.S. officials usually describe this war in noble terms, extolling their unflinching support, $175 billion worth, for heroic Ukraine in the fight against the monster Mr. Putin. Sometimes, though, they are blunter, such as when Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told reporters in Poland a couple months after the invasion that the United States wants to see Russia weakened. The comments suggested that the United States would weaponize Ukrainian patriotism and spend Ukrainian lives because of prolonged war, even a war that could probably not be won, suited U.S. interests in chipping away at Mr. Putin's staying power. This was 3 years ago. I believe it's right to call Ukraine a proxy war because I think it's reasonable to conclude that the Biden administration has supported the war not only in deference to righteous Ukrainian determination to fight off Russia, but also because the war was a chance to debilitate our enemy without directly engaging in it. Here is from the AtlanticCouncil.org. January 12th, 2023. The West reaps multiple benefits from backing Ukraine against Russia. Now, people will look to this stuff as not an admission, but as simply a way to sell the continued support to Ukraine because Americans are selfish. They will look to Joe Biden saying, oh, but we have artillery shell. We have artillery shell facilities in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Like, all of the dollars that we're spending on Ukrainian defense is actually being spent in the United States of America to beef up United States of America contracting, like that's actually building our manufacturing capabilities, right? They say this, and people point to that and say, "Oh, it's because we want to. It's because we want to sell it to Americans." No, those are actual moments of truth, brutal honesty. Okay, that is what the truth of the matter is.
Sure that this can be salvaged. I mean, can this relationship Trump be repaired in your view?
I think anything is possible, but it has to go back to the point that President Trump is interested in being involved in this for the purposes of bringing about an enduring and lasting peace. That's what he wants to achieve. And I think if I'm a country, okay, that's involved in a war with a bigger country, who's losing thousands of people, who's had 3 million people leave my country because they can't be there, who is facing these challenges, I would be thanking a president who's trying to help bring about an end to this war. I would be thanking him, and I would be supportive of what he's trying to do, at least in my public pronouncements and in my public posture. And we didn't see that today, and we haven't seen that for the last few days. Now, will that change? I hope so. It should, for the purposes of global peace and stability in Europe and around the world.
Do you think you can make the argument that he hasn't said thank you?
Well, I think the vice president said he hadn't said it today. He hadn't heard it today in that meeting, and we were.
He did. This stuff is so stupid. He did.
We're hoping that meeting would begin by thank you for everything you've done for us. We wouldn't be where we are today without you. We wouldn't even have a chance to negotiate a peace without the help you gave us. By the way, without the help you gave us when you were president in the first term, because President Obama refused to provide them defensive capabilities in terms of military hardware. He did provide him blankets.
Yeah, and that was brought up today during that
aid,
meeting.
And it was brought up, but I was there. In fact, I vividly recall at the time Vice President Biden saying to me in a meeting that we had at the Vice President's residence that the reason why we didn't want to provide them those weapons is because they might use them. That was his exact quote. And that was the attitude. I remember clearly then the Ukrainian leaders saying, we don't need more blankets or MREs. We need weapons to defend ourselves. And they didn't do it. President Trump did. He provided them weaponry, some of it, much of it, which was used at the beginning of this war. And without those weapons being in their stocks, this war could have been over very quickly, 2, 3, 4 days. Another pot shot that Zelensky took today, when the president pointed that out, you know what Zelensky said? He said, yeah, we've heard that from the Russians. That's not a Russian narrative. That was the official position, okay, of the United States. I vividly recall being briefed by leaders in the Biden administration telling us that this war was going to be over in 5 to 6 days. They believed that. That was their assessment at the time. And it wasn't the case because of the weapons that Ukraine had in its stocks because of President Trump in his first term. So he should have been grateful for that and grateful for what we're doing now. And one more point. It's not just President Trump. There's news reports out there from NBC News, at least is one of the places I recall, reporting that Biden had a shouting match with Zelensky for not being grateful and not being thankful for everything that was provided back in 2022. Now, that didn't happen in front of the press. That was leaked, but it got out there. These frustrations are not unique to President Trump. There was those frustrations in the previous administration, if NBC News is to be believed.
Right. But obviously we've never seen anything like what we saw today. But the point that Zelensky was making there is that everyone predicted his demise, and Ukraine was able to fight and to survive. Zelensky was able to survive. The Ukrainian people have been fighting for 3 years. You yourself have said previously that the United States should assist Ukraine as long as the Ukrainians are willing to fight. So I think the question coming out...
Why do people's brain break when you cover this issue? Very simple. American exceptionalism and unimaginable amounts of consent being manufactured in one direction from outlets and institutions that they care about, that they trust for years and years. It's a faucet of propaganda. And when you have a moment where that kind of breaks because Donald Trump is president again, people have two options. Either they desperately try to cling on to the old ways of thinking, or try to re-examine their biases and try to re-examine their social conditioning. And most people don't want to do that. That's it. Like, I don't think most liberals are thirsty for endless war all around the world. I think most Americans are not thinking about it like that. There are certainly, NATO heads on Twitter or whatever who reassert some semblance of American power, and that makes them feel powerful. If you dominate like weak enemies, vulnerable populations, then all of this stuff, the fact that I don't have fucking healthcare means something, That's why they flex on Yemen and post about how, oh, Yemen's going to learn today what it's like why we don't have healthcare, like, that sort of stuff. But most Americans don't think like that. I think most Americans are just looking at the situation and hearing over and over and over again that correctly Ukraine is on the right side and we're on the right side for once. Like, please let us have this. And that, we are bravely and boldly supporting our allies in this regard. And it's actually a selfless endeavor that I think is like the biggest lie. The biggest lie that the media tells is that we're selfless. We've never been selfless. There's never been a moment, like, nation states don't engage in selfless, morally righteous acts. That is not the case. They only operate in the interest of whatever the interest of the nation state is. For America, it's capitalism. So obviously it's always going to be, we are always going to be beholden to capital owners, whether it be the military industrial complex or, any number of different corporate executive and corporate interests. Okay, but that's what it is.
Out of that meeting is what happens next year. I mean, you are the U.S. chief diplomat. Is there a path for diplomacy? Is a ceasefire still a possibility tonight?
Well, number one, you know who else said that Ukraine is very brave and very valiant? President Trump. He said it today. He said it repeatedly. Your soldiers have been very brave. Your fighters have been very brave. Your people have been very brave. He said that repeatedly. And everyone recognizes that. But we're 3 years into a war that has no end in sight and no exit strategy. The EU doesn't have an exit strategy. I saw the comments tonight from the leader of the EU saying there needs a new leader of the free world. I mean, these people are just playing silly games and saying these things. What is their exit strategy? What is anybody else's exit strategy? The only person on the planet who is actively trying to bring an end to this conflict is named Donald Trump, the President of the United States. He's the only one that's trying to do it. And we should be helping him to achieve it. And so do I think it's possible? Yeah, I hope it's possible, because that's what we do try to do at the Department of State, is we try to bring end to conflicts, not start new ones, and certainly not extend them.
Senator Lindsey Graham, after having lunch with President Trump today, said Zelensky either needs to resign or they need to send someone over that we can do business with. Do you feel that President Zelensky needs to resign?
Well, that's Lindsey's feeling, because he feels very passionately. You know, he's been a very strong supporter of Ukraine. Lindsey Graham has been one of the strongest voices for Ukraine. Well,
Lindsey Graham is lower than dirt, okay? I don't no. Lindsey Graham does not care about a single Ukrainian life, okay? He does not care, unless, you know, it's maybe someone he's having sex with, but that's besides the point. He only cares about maintaining loyalty to Donald Trump. He is a ginormous ass kisser. Lindsey Graham historically even turned around. He literally historically turned around and sucked up to Donald Trump after Donald Trump shit on his best friend. Okay? Shit on his best friend, the Maverick John McCain. He does not care. Okay? He is just a simple brown-noser through and through. That's the only thing he cares about. Lindsey Graham only cares about Lindsey fucking Graham and maybe Israel. He cares about Israel. He is not a principled person.
United States, the president's taken no position on that. What he said today is let him come back when he's ready to do peace. That's what he said. Let him come back when he's ready to do peace. So I can't speak for what anybody else said. I can only go off the words from the president of the United States, and that is today this is not going to be productive any further. When Zelensky's ready to make peace and he's serious about peace, let him come back then, and that's when we'll re-engage with them. And what he means by that is when he understands. And how will you measure that? Well, I think it's everything I've said already, and that is, how are you going to get Vladimir Putin and the Russian Federation to a table to discuss even the opportunity, even to explore whether there's an opportunity for peace? You're not going to do it by calling them names. It makes everybody feel very good. You can pass resolutions. You can put out very strongly worded statements. Senators can do it. I did when I was in the Senate. House members can do it. Commentators can do it. And countries that have no real skin in the game can do it. But when you are the president of the United States of America and you're trying to bring about peace the way Donald Trump is trying to bring about peace, the only way to do it is you have to create space for people to come to the table and talk. And that is something we should all be applauding, not criticizing. And not pretending that we can just extend this war forever until and that everybody has unlimited resources to continue to fund it on both sides, by the way.
And President Zelensky has said he does want this war to end. He just cares about how it ends. We heard that from the other European leaders who came to the Oval Office also this week. President Trump said to me today, before that shouting match erupted in the Oval Office, that he doesn't believe there have to be security guarantees in place before the ceasefire, that you can come to a ceasefire agreement and then put those in place. Do you agree with that?
That's not what he said. What he said is, why am I going to be talking about security guarantees, is what he said. That doesn't mean they can't happen as part of that negotiation, but you have to have an agreement. What peace is there to secure if you first don't have an agreement on peace? Like, what do the Russians need in order to end this conflict? What
so you're saying it would happen as part of the negotiations?
Well, again, how do you end a war? You have to find out what the combatants require in order to stop shooting at each other. What are the Russians' needs? What do they need to see in order for them to stop fighting? What do the Ukrainians need in order to stop fighting? And then once you have that in place, then you can decide the next step, which is, and what do we need to do to make sure this never happens again, that it doesn't happen in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I don't think President Trump is interested in a one-year ceasefire.
Okay, my takeaway from this, maybe people get mad at me for saying this, but my takeaway from this is that it seems like they're probably still going to go back and you know, continue with the ceasefire. Like, they're going to get the mineral deal and continue with the ceasefire, and they'll do like back deal assurances to Ukraine that, like, of course, if if there's American contractors present there, then obviously like that will be the baked insecurity. Like, that's it. I love your optimism, but come on. I'm not giving you a prediction. Obviously, I would never make predictions on especially Russia-related things. But I'm expecting they are doing a mineral deal and Trump will say it's an assurance, but Russia will break it and Trump will say fucking nobody cares and it will just end up like Gaza. I feel like Marco Rubio in outside of just don't everybody hyper focuses on Marco Rubio playing the role of defending Trump and like bullying Zelensky. And because of that, they don't hear the parts where he keeps saying, we have to do a ceasefire. We have to do a ceasefire. We have to come to the table. We have to do a ceasefire. And I think that part is more significant. That implies that, either they're just going to cut Ukraine loose, which would be insane, or, they're going to continue with the pre-existing deal. I don't know. I just I don't even know how many minerals Ukraine even has. I feel like this is more so just like to sell this idea that they're like getting something out of it because Americans are deeply selfish. After years and years of saying Ukraine is bullshit, we shouldn't have given Ukraine a single dime. What are we doing? They're just like, oh yeah, we're getting something out of it, I promise, when they're not really getting too much out of it at all. Like, I think that they see it mostly as like a distraction from, the real villains, which is China. You know what I mean? That lie is probably told towards Trump to make sure he does a deal. Yeah. Like, I don't know how many minerals we have to begin with in Ukraine. You feel me?
I don't think he's interested in a 6-month ceasefire. He wants this thing to end. He has said that repeatedly. But again,
don't know if you saw me post this earlier, but France announced that they were going to open up their arsenal for nuclear deterrence. I think that is like I think that right there is unironically a world destabilizing moment. Like, Europe deciding to leave the American security partnership is I can't even comprehend what that would look like, especially without like cutting a deal with China or something. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know. I can't even close my eyes and imagine what that would look like, especially when you think about the historical precedent right there in terms of militarization in Europe. Okay, that's number one. And number two, I mean, a lot of their equipment is equipment that they bought from us, and maybe tweaked a little bit if they have any equipment at all. Sean the Black, thank you for the raid. Hope you had a good stream.
He's not going to use the kind of language that maybe plays well in the public sphere or in the political sphere for people that want to take shots at him, but it's not going to allow us to have a negotiation or even to explore a potential negotiation. President Donald Trump is a man who's made deals his entire life in business, and he's bringing those principles to government, and he's the only one in the world that has any chance. If Donald Trump tomorrow decides, I don't care about Ukraine, I don't care about Russia, and I don't care about this war, and he walks away, I ask you, I ask everyone, well, who on this planet has any chance whatsoever, even a 1% chance of getting the combatants to the table? The answer is there is no one. He is the only one on earth right now that has any chance. If there is a chance at peace, he's the only one that has a chance to deliver on it.
Do you still see a meeting happening with President Putin there, President Zelensky, and President Trump? Is that still possible?
Well, I think that's premature. I mean, what would they? You first need to make sure that this is even a possibility, and you have to explore it. And look, there's good signs, I think, maybe, somewhat about at least the Russians' willingness to engage. And but we have. That's not going to be done in front of cameras. It's not going to be done in an open ballroom. There's a lot of work to be done before we get to this point. This is a complex war that has causes behind it that go back a number of years. There's a lot to navigate. A lot has been invested on both sides. Gains have been made by the Russian Federation in some places. All of these things have to be worked through, but it's not going to be done through press conferences and in the media. It has to be done through what the vice president said today, the serious work of diplomacy. It's you know, it's a lot easier to just say, well, we're with Ukraine all the way, no matter what, however long it takes. Well, 15 years, 12 years? I mean, that's absurd. That's not sustainable, and everybody knows it. The president wants to end this war. He wants to explore whether there's a possibility to do it and do it quickly. He campaigned on it. It was a promise of his, and he intends to when he says these things, he doesn't just say them, he means them, and he's doing it. And it's the first time we've seen that in a long time in American politics.
Secretary.
What are the chances Trump will just go on meeting with Putin anyways, lift sanctions, let him do whatever in Ukraine for EU to deal with? That would be truly unprecedented. That is unironically
we want to bring in
how NATO and American hegemony ends.
NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel, who of course is just back from the front lines in Ukraine. Richard, this quickly became the Oval Office outburst seen, heard around the world, obviously in horror in the eyes of many European allies, those in Ukraine as well. What is the reaction in European capitals and in Ukraine to what we just witnessed?
Well, I think you had it exactly right. First, it was shock. This event happened pretty late last night. So the European capitals were already into the evening. They didn't really react to it in real time. But now with the...
Oh, I want to also get back to this ass kisser. To the hand-wringing Europeans who felt offended by President Trump rejecting being lectured by President Zelensky, be my guest. Defend Ukraine from Putin. It is long past time for the Euro people of defending their own continent. They've allowed their militaries to be hollowed out, and when Europe speaks, no bad guy listens. I say this with great sadness. The last group of people that I would count on to defend freedom are the Europeans.
The passage of a little bit of time, that shock has become horror, and you've seen almost every European country, big and small, put out some sort of statement saying, we express solidarity with Ukraine. You can never blame the victim. You should blame the aggressor. Germany, in particular, taking a very strong stance. One legislator there saying that he was shocked that the United States could stab an ally in the back. Now the Europe.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Is it really that shocking? When have we not done that? When have we not done that, man? There are very few instances. Actually, there is no instance. Look at World War II. What did we do immediately after World War II? What did we do? Right after World War II, we were like, all right, it's time. It's time. Okay? Israel wasn't stabbed. Israel doesn't count. It is an extension of America. Israel is not an ally. Israel is America. Okay? It's just more America. There is no moment where America has not stabbed their allies in the back. Stab in the back myth part 2 just dropped. Even the Marshall Plan ended up undermining the European economy. There has never been a moment. Okay? We saved Europe with our military and rebuilt it with the Marshall Plan. Okay, great. There was a very profound and very important reason for why we did that. We did that so we could use Europe for the next 100 years as a cumsock. Look at Europe right now. I mean, it's a very funny time to say that. Obviously, that chatter is joking. Like, he's taking the position of a hog, but like, once again, why did we do that? I mean, look at where that allegiance has led Europe to. A lot of us Europeans had high expectations of Trump. Now we're all terribly disappointed. Wait, what? I'm European and I'm disappointed in Trump. I trusted him. I expected solid policies and the creation of a quality peace agreement. This is a real disaster and a disappointment. How do we have fell for it again awards for Europeans? I thought this was a truly American hog thing. I didn't realize that Europeans also had their own version of the fell for it again award. No way. Nah, Europeans hate. Europeans have like a pan-European supremacist attitude in general. I don't think that they would ever look at a crass guy like Donald Trump and ever see him as a positive. That is hard to believe.
Europeans are trying not just to show Zelensky's support, but they're trying to potentially replace the United States as the
Europeans don't even like like Democrats. Europeans don't like any American politician, let alone someone like Trump.
The key diplomatic player, the key backer of Ukraine. And Keir Starmer in the UK, you said Zelensky just arrived in London. It is because the UK is now trying to organize.
Trump is still better than Holocaust heirs? Come on, dude. Come on. I mean, the most I will give credence to American foreign policy is bipartisan, regardless of who is wearing the hat. Okay, the idea that Trump, come on, in terms of maintaining American dominance and proceeding to find a manageable exit from Ukraine, I think that the Democrats most likely would have played a softer game. They would have kept these conversations behind closed doors, you know, or maybe even forced Ukraine's hand to lowering their age of conscription to 18. I don't know. One or the other.
Organize an emergency summit. And Zelensky did put out a series of messages this morning on social media thanking President Trump, thanking the United States repeatedly, but insisting that they need security guarantees. They can't just take Vladimir Putin's word for it that he will stop the invasion, that he won't invade Ukraine again. Ukraine said, and President Zelensky has said time and time again, Putin's words aren't to be believed. They're not to be trusted. We need security guarantees. President Trump clearly doesn't want to provide them and had this outburst when Zelensky kept pressing the point, and he was called, being disrespectful to the office. Europe is now trying to turn its shock and horror into some sort of action, but it is not likely, Peter, that the Europeans are going to take this burden and be able to shoulder it alone. They still need American participation. It is the essential partner.
So then, Richard, is there any hope that this gets repaired, that this relationship can get patched up?
Well, I think it really depends on whether this incident was a setup. Was he ambushed? And some have suggested that. Many people I've been speaking to have suggested that that Trump and Vance were looking for a fight and that President Zelensky rose to it. If they were looking for a fight and they got one, then it would be unlikely that you're going to have any real reconciliation. And what we just saw was a definitive break between President Zelensky and the United States. If it was just tempers and emotions that ran high, big personalities all in one room, then it is possible. But in Europe, they're not sure. In Europe, they're saying maybe this was the definitive break.
If together we cannot put enough pressure on Moscow, then how can we claim that we can defeat China? EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas continues to fire with her words.
Росія така це непереможний, що, до речі, не відповідає дійсності.
Yeah, these guys will never learn. Okay. You know what? I'm just kicking back. I'm just kicking back and just watching. Okay. Europe hates China. I'm telling you. No, I know they do. I know they do. I know that. I know that. Okay. You know what? Let's see what happens, dude. Let's see what happens. Because these guys are like, these guys will cling on to the American teat till the very last breath. Okay. Doors open. Doors open. Doors open. Okay. The documentary people are here, by the way. So we're going to switch gears from Ukraine to